Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So, listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there. Well, welcome for joining Get Out There and Get Known podcast. This is a very special episode, very near and dear to my heart. Two friends of mine that I've known over 40 years. So I guess about 40 plus years ago, we graduated from Cass Tech High School together. And who would have known where we are now, like what this was all about? Both of them are still in the field of communications. One is the dean at Cathy Hughes School of Communications, Dr. Gracie Lawson, and the other one is Dr. Judy Foster Davis, who is a professor of marketing and integrated marketing communications. But we're going to go into a little bit of their backstory, and we're going to talk about where they are right now. And both of them, we are childs of Detroit, the child of the 60s, one of those people of the 70s where Black was really down with the people, right? Black Lives Matter. Black lives always matter for us. And so I'm going to bring up Dr. Judy Foster and Dr. Gracie Lawson. There you are. Hey, welcome, ladies. This is where it all started.
Oh, you are taking us back.
It all started at that green and white. So give a little bit of the formal background of each one of them. I'll start with Dr. Judy. I'll start with Dr. Gracie. It's so funny because I want to make sure that I properly introduce him as doctor. She is Dr. Gracie Lawson-Borders, Dean and Professor of the Cathy Hughes School of Communications at Howard University. She's the incoming president of the Associations of School of Journalism and Mass Communication, ASJMC, say that fast 5 times, and a member of the board of directors of the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication. She's also a member of the policy board of Howard Journal of Communications, editorial board member of the International Journal on Media Management, and advisory board member of blackpast.org at the University of Washington. She has held offices in the community and national organizations such as Habitat for Humanity. Given a little bit about her background, her undergraduate, I believe, was at Michigan State University. She received her PhD from Wayne State University, her master's degree from Northwestern University, and like I said, her BA from Michigan State, but she was a CAS technician. Judy Foster Davis, loved Dr. Judy, and let me find her bio here. She said it earlier. And Dr. Judy Foster, again, is a CAS tech, but she also went to undergrad at Howard. So that is like a good connection. Well, I want to have both of them on there. So Judy Foster, finding the bio here, just a really short bio to give you the formal bio because they are both PhDs. Dr. Judy Foster Davis, Professor of Marketing Integrated Communications, IMC at Eastern Michigan. Her research concerns IMC strategy, policies, historical, and multicultural marketing topics, a graduate of Howard and Michigan State University, and is a member of RIM, Race in Marketplace Research Network, and serves as the editorial advisory boards for Advertising Society Quarter and the Journal of Historical Research and Marketing. She has a book. I'm trying to read down here where the name of the book is. There it is. Okay, the name of her book. She's the author of the book Pioneering African American Women in the Advertising Business, Biographies of Mad Black Women. And that came out in 2017. So ladies, you all have really would have thought that 40 plus years that you would be PhDs in marketing and communications doing the darn thing. And how both of you guys both have that Howard connection too. So let me ask the question first to Dr. Gracie. How did you even imagine this was going to happen? Your curriculum at Cass Tech was what?
Well, I was in business administration, but when I left Cass, I went to Michigan State and majored in journalism, and I never changed.
That's it. I remember you were a very, very, it's like you blossomed with that. And I think one of the mentors you met, I can't remember the African American gentleman's name, but it was a day when we didn't have computers and we had typewriters. So, we aging ourselves. But you wrote him a letter, or we met him, and I think at one of the halls or something like that. And you wrote him a letter and he gave you some advice because you wanted to know how to break into journalism. Do you remember the gentleman's name? He's passed since then.
You're going to make it escape me. I know you're talking about it. It's going to escape me now, but it'll come along the way. But
he was one of the pioneers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it was one of many people who were so gracious, and even Judy will tell you now that we have to return the favor and pay it forward, to reach out to people and encourage them to do it.
Yes, yes. And so, Judy, I remember when you graduated from school, you came back to Detroit and you worked in advertising.
Right.
And you were working at WB Donor, I believe, at the time.
I worked for WB Donor. I worked for what then was Baker Apps, Cunningham, and Kleppinger. That was after I left, it was acquired by DDB Needham.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that this is kind of a full circle moment for me, because not only are we were all high school classmates,
mm-hmm.
but when I was an undergrad at Howard, I was in the School of Communications.
Wow.
And at one point I was a journalism minor, but I was trying to major and minor in the same school, and they told me I had to pick something else. So my major was basically a blend of communications and business.
Okay.
And I ended up going into academia in the business school. So, but the funny thing is that I'm heavily relying on the communications background, because I helped to launch a program in 2006 in Integrated Marketing Communications, or IMC, which is marketing, which is in business, plus communications.
Wow.
So like it all just sort of came together. So, yep.
That's but one of the things, each one of you guys, Gracie, she hasn't stepped out for a second. So one of the things, busy professors, busy.
Right.
I apologize. There wasn't anybody in the office earlier. Now somebody walked in the office.
That's okay. We got you. One of the things too, all of you all, when you were at Cass, were you involved in the school newspaper at all? Just kind of give you a backtrack of maybe some of the similarities between all of us.
What? You know what? The high school, I don't think I wrote for the paper. I really don't. I don't think I wrote for the paper when I was at Cass.
I was all in. I was editorial director.
Yeah,
I was the feature editor, and our senior year, I was editor in chief.
Right.
So I was all in.
I think Gracie, we were both in business administration, so we had a newsletter. I don't think you remember that, and you wrote for that.
Yes.
So we wrote for Scott's and that sort of thing. And we also went out to different conferences, and we were always doing these.
Oh yeah, we were always we really on the
contests and things like and all that kind of stuff. And then I went to Wayne State. I went to like a school that I could actually touch and feel, like the Detroit Free Press, Detroit News. They were like our professors and things like that. And so I actually started working for the Detroit Free Press before I got out of college, because it was right there. And then one of the things too, for the last 2 years, even though I was in the journalism school, I'm kind of like you, Judy, I was in advertising PR major. And it was like, I didn't know which one I really wanted to do. I said, I'm gonna just try them all. And I ended up working for a PR firm, because I said, if I'm gonna if I'm gonna like this thing, I'm gonna decide, am I really gonna like it? So I interned for an agency while I was in college, and I did promotions and that sort of thing. But I really wasn't sure if I wanted to be the writer, if I wanted to be the journalist. I worked at the school newspaper. I mean, when I was at Cass, Judy, I was the advertising manager. That's what I did. And I wasn't really sure. I wrote copy. I liked writing, but sales was always a part of it as well. So leaving Wayne State, went to go work at the Free Press in advertising. And then I actually did like feature stories. So I always loved doing feature stories. So doing this right here, and I keep up with everybody that we went to high school with, like Ed Gordon was in our class as well. And he has a fabulous journalism career as well. But a lot of the people that went to school with us are doing really good. Out of all the people, though, I am so proud of you guys, like the most, because being a professor, I heard like the other interview with, it's only 2% of Black women that are tenured professors in America.
Yeah, we've got work to do. The Chronicle of Higher Education just ran a piece about that, and we've got a lot of work to do to get not only, faculty of color and Black women, but to get us across the line with tenure. Yeah.
It's a tiny number, and I'm a tenured full professor, and you can count the female Black full professors in marketing on probably less than one hand. It's tiny. And we do play a role in like the mentorship and mentor people through, there's the PhD program, which didn't exist when I was in school, so I'm really dating myself. And like I mentioned, I'm a part of a research network that's called RIM, which stands for Race in the Marketplace. And we look at all of these issues that relate to the intersection of race and marketing. And I guess we're on the naughty list because one of our foundational theories is, critical race theory, which is coming under attack right now.
Exactly. So, yeah, Judy is right on point. I mean, Pam, right now, if you check out the Chronicle of Higher Ed, because someone told me about it, they ran a piece with some things that are going on down in North Carolina, and it came up, and maybe out of almost 250,000 tenured associate and full professors, maybe 2% of them are Black women. That's not a good number right now.
Well, it was the thing. Was it Nicole? I can't think of the journalist that was.
Well, Nicole
Hannah-Jones.
Yes. So that was under a big scrutiny, and it was like, did it ever get reversed back? I have quit following the story. Is she?
No, it's still in play. It's still
It's still an active situation, and I think there's a lawsuit, or I think,
but really
some type of review is going on. But it's purely political. And we actually have another classmate whose daughter is an assistant professor at UNC in another area. So I'm not going to mention any names because when you're a non-tenured person, you can be very vulnerable. But it's a real interesting dynamic now that when you think of an idea, I mean, critical race theory is just that. It's a theory, it's a concept, it's an idea. That now we've entered into this political environment where we are literally now engaging with what I call the thought police. And you start to just kind of slip down this real slippery slope.
Correct.
In terms of what it means for, academic freedom, not to mention what happens in the education system. We're supposed to be engaged in this marketplace of ideas.
Exactly.
Otherwise we become we just slide into a political system that I don't want to imagine here in this country.
Yes, it's a very chilling effect when you try to stop academic freedom. So therefore we have to stay, the both of us are part of an ecosystem that has to stay vigilant in pushing past this. The voices need to be heard, the ideas need to be heard, and we just can't accept anybody trying to silence people and their intellectual thought process. We just cannot succumb to that.
So both of you guys, we came out in the 70s. Were you a part, and NABJ started in the 70s because it was started because they were really trying to stand up for Black media, Black journalists, trying to get Black people in the media. So 40 plus years later, and you're both in education, and you've been encouraging the Black students, obviously coming to your classrooms to go into this field. Are there more now than it was then? Is there still a need for NABJ and the different organizations? And is what I'm trying to say is, like, we did this, and it would think 40 years later there will be some progress. Is there progress, or do you see it turning back?
Well, there has been progress, but there absolutely is a continued need. I mean, you're seeing most recently this past year, new people announced as the head of CBS News, a Black woman. You're hearing new people announced, but it's more than that. It's sort of like what Madam Vice President Kamala Harris said, but I will not be the last. And so we have to get past the first. We should not be in the 21st century in the year 2021 still saying this is the first.
Mhm.
That's the step that we have to make sure we push past. We can't sit back and be okay with that. We have to keep encouraging people and making sure people are prepared. Judy and where she's at, and continue to push young people and tell them there are resources and there is networking, and the same thing we do here, because it's needed. I am someone, I thought I had positioned so I could show my First Amendment plaque that sits in my office. I am a true believer that we need to make sure voices are always there. We need to understand the perspectives and the lived experiences of everyone, and particularly Black people in this country. So we have to tell young people, don't stop. We have to keep pushing them. We have to keep preparing them.
One of the things too, and Judy, you went to Howard, and then Gracie, you are the professor dean at Howard. But I remember when I was at Wayne State, obviously a white urban school, and if we wanted to know more about communications, what I would do, me and a friend of mine, Claire Wilkerson, we would travel to Howard University to the annual communications conference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. Did you go to those communications conferences?
It's still here. We still hold it every October. It was virtual this past year.
Oh my God. That was so life-changing. I mean, you didn't have to go to Howard in order to go.
Exactly.
But I remember Gracie going to that conference. I must have been like maybe senior rising. And I went to that conference and I heard Dr. Percy Sutton, who owned a lot of radio stations and things like that in New York. And I remember him being the keynote speaker, and we were there. We were trying to just get a job and trying to figure out what we wanted to do. We had a little resumes in our hand. But I remember he said to the group at that time, and it stuck with me to this day. And Judy is probably the reason why I started BART. But anyway, what he said, he says, all of you people are very bright. All of these Black people here, your students, you're great. I look at your resumes and I'm just really just so proud and just astonished at all of your accomplishments. But if I look on your resume and I don't see that you have given back to your community, if you're not a member of the NAACP, or you are not part of like the National Urban League or anything that is giving back to your community, I will send you a nice letter. So congrats to your accomplishments. But until you decide that you want to give back to your community, I will have really nothing to say and will not be interviewing you to work in my company. I was like, oh, let me look at my resume here. I don't have nothing, but it just shook me so that we were just so self-absorbed in just what we wanted to do and not really trying to figure out the people behind us, what they will do. And so I would just remember, I went to it 2 or 3 times, probably. I think I met Tony Brown there and all that kind of stuff. But that was one of the things that was pivoting. So I'm going to ask Judy first. What was a pivotal point, I guess, maybe in your career? Not to know that you're Black, because we grew up in Detroit. We know we're Black. But what was a pivotal point of really making you decide to really write the book that you wrote, or really to take a stand for the things that you're doing now in terms of being a trailblazer, I guess you would say, and really mentoring other Blacks?
I want to back up a little bit, because being a student at Howard as an undergrad had a profound impact on me in terms of just giving me a broader worldview in terms of what it is that, Black people can accomplish. And I think it gave me such a sense of confidence that I was able to go to Michigan State into, a PhD program as a research program. And you're dealing with people and concepts and things that it teaches you to do research and to do it in a way that is objective, but also to bring forth these hidden stories and agendas, which is kind of the central point of my message. A little side story, the Howard Communications Conference is how I actually ended up at Michigan State, which is a weird thing.
Yeah.
I was probably a year or so out of Howard. I would go back every year for the communications conference. And I had been kicking around in my head this idea of going back to school for a PhD. I didn't know how I would do it. And I went to Howard's communications conference, and there was a recruiter there, and his name was Dr. Larry Red. He was
I
at
remember Dr. Larry Red.
School of Communications.
Yes.
Well, there was this recruitment fair, and he was the only school that was represented. And he was sitting over there literally like he was the Maytag, repairman. Nobody was going to talk to him. So I just went over to be friendly, and I said, "Hey, I'm from Michigan." And we struck up a conversation, and he told me that, you can go to Michigan State's PhD program in communications, basically fully funded. So my ears got big like that. And to make a long story short, I was recruited at Howard to go to Michigan State's PhD program. And
Wow.
and Larry Red he mentored me throughout. And like you said, the Paying It Forward and some of the ones that came in after us, it was just really, kind of monumental.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I wanted to bring up in this podcast is this whole idea of telling our stories and contributing to and driving a narrative. Because you see, that's what happens in the political sphere, in the educational sphere. Who's controlling this information flow and what gets said and what gets repeated? Mm-hmm. That was kind of the genesis for my book, because I do research, and a lot of my research is what we call archival research. I go and I look at old records, and I go interviewing people, and I go looking under rocks and digging up weird stuff. I don't do like statistical charts and graphs and all that stuff. Or if you see me co-author a paper and you see a lot of statistics and whatnot, that means one of my co-authors did that. But what I'm interested in is, what is the narrative that comes out of that? So what led to the book was when I looked at, there was a book by Stephen Fox called The Mirror Makers. And there was a passage in that book that always irritated me, in that he mentioned how Blacks had gone into the advertising business as entrepreneurs in the late 60s, early 70s, and they had kind of painted themselves into this ethnic corner. And I thought to myself, I said, well, what were they allowed to do in that space? And so that led me to do some research when I looked at how Black advertising agencies developed, who some of the key players were,
Right.
what kinds of things they had to deal with. And when you think about advertising agencies, the only way for an agency to survive is you got to have clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the clients that have the resources are majority white corporations for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at how these agencies developed, they were developed under, I don't want to make this an academic theory thing, but under what we call an economic detour, meaning that they were directed into certain areas of the business, which at that time was pretty much exclusively the Black consumer market. So they would be brought in by corporate marketers to handle the pitches directed at Black consumers. And that still happens to this day. Even if, the show Blackish, and the lead, I think the first episode of Blackish, it shows Andre Johnson excitedly waiting for his promotion because he's going to become the VP at this majority white agency. But when they name his position, he is the VP of urban marketing. Mm-hmm. And he's sort of taken aback.
Yeah, I remember that.
He wanted to just be the VP of marketing, all marketing.
Right.
And he had the skill set to do so. Now, fast forward, I think they're in the last season of that show, and he is now considering leaving and starting his own agency because the structure and the system will not allow him to break out of that ethnic box, if you will, unless he does something pretty dramatic. And that's kind of, I think, where the series has left off for this new season to start up in the fall. So we'll see what happens. But that same dilemma, that same economic detour is being played out in today's marketplace.
And it's pretty much like what you talked about, mirroring, right? So the client is white and they want to have their person on the agency side white too. So how can you ever break out of that box if you want to do what you said, that the book called mirroring? They want to mirror that. It's not going to happen because there's no way that I will ever be white. So you got to figure out how to dig deeper into like figuring out like this is systemic racism. Basically, it's systemic racism. And I go to this because I talk about this every single week on Get Out There, Get Known podcast. I talk about the importance of Black media and why that's important for our own narrative. Whether it's Kathy Hughes and what she's done, which is amazing, whether it is the Black newspapers, which is NMPA. I talk about the whole thing about we have to support Black media. I have my own magazine called Speakers Magazine. We have to own our own media. This podcast is definitely owning your own media. My colors are red, black, and green. I'm not apologetic about being Black because of what Judy just said. It's like if they don't invite you to the table, then create your own damn table. And so Howard University, one of the stellar HBCUs, all of that, they only were created because we weren't allowed into a certain space.
Right.
So then, Judy, you talk about in your book, you interviewed some people that own advertising agencies. Barbara Proctor was one out of Chicago, and name some other. There are a few Black agencies. Were those Black agencies always relegated to multicultural marketing?
Yes. Myself and another professor named Jason Chambers, who's at the University of Illinois, are the two primary academics that look at the biographies and the backgrounds of these Black advertising entrepreneurs. So my book focuses on the women. Barbara Proctor, as you mentioned, Carolyn Jones, who's from Michigan, Joelle Martin, who was the first Black woman to open an agency in New York City, and Carol H. Williams, who was the first Black creative person inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame. Wow. So there's a chapter dedicated to each woman, but I also talk about other women in the business in more of a collective sense, and just the kinds of challenges that they have had to confront and overcome. And some of their stories are triumphant, some are quite tragic. Carolyn Jones, she had breast cancer and she had a second bout of it, which took her out of here. And if you look at some of the issues, some of the health issues that some of them had and whatnot, it may have been related to some of the stress in that sphere and whatnot. But these were some dynamic, go-getting women, highly professional. And in addition to, my book and Jason's book, which is Madison Avenue and the Color Line, where he focuses more on the males in the business. Between these icons and these pioneers, we're hoping to do some sort of a documentary or a way to bring these lives to the screen instead of just in print. I hate to say it, people don't like to read books anymore, and they want to tweet and they want to do all these little bursts of information, but to kind of dig deeper and look at what happened, we have to tell our stories. Look at the stories surrounding the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, the devastation of Black Wall Street. Who's going to tell these stories? So it's important for us to tell our stories, to contribute to, and run these narratives.
This is
if we don't do it, who will?
This is a book here. It's a Chicken Soup for the Soul. I'm Speaking Now. Black women share their truth, 101 stories of courage, hope, and love. And 2,000 women submitted to be in this book. That's how desperate they wanted to tell their stories. But only 101 can be picked. And so when you said, Judy, that whole thing, it reminds me of how bold we were in our 20s. I started an organization with Portia Lockett called Blacks in Advertising, Radio, and Television, because I was like, I'm fed up of advertising agencies being so racist. I was fed up of the radio and TV stations being so racist outside of like in the advertising realm, because NABJ was like for the editorial side. So I started that to really make some change. And so the whole point of it, and I'll let Gracie speak to this, to talk about really helping other students who were struggling, who were like trying to break in. It's just like just to break in. So Gracie, kind of speak to what you're telling students or how students are feeling looking for that first job. Are they more entrepreneurial? Okay, let me get to Gracie.
Well, Judy can tell you this. This is Howard, so it's nonstop. It's
Okay.
nonstop. They know part of being a student here at Howard is you do not let anything stop you. That's ingrained. First of all, you are brought in, and when you are pinned at your pinning ceremony and you become that Howard Bison, from day one, you are told you are unstoppable. And so there's an expectation of success. And Judy may have flashbacks of this, but it really is. It is a culture at the university of expectation of success, expectation of you accomplishing. People.
Is it different? Was it different from Michigan State? Because you knew Dr. Mary Wynn as well, right?
Yes and no. I went to undergrad in Michigan State, and yes, we were told this is what you had to do to get out of here, and you're going to do this and you're going to accomplish this. But there's something different in the culture and the DNA at Howard for students who attend here. And I didn't attend as a student, but they will tell you, it's not a if. You have to accomplish. You have to know. And so you are driven by people letting you know, well, I expect you to do this. And why aren't you over there doing that? And why didn't you go over there and do this? And so from internships to working with your faculty members, from staying in touch and networking. I mean, these students are phenomenal. I'm always surprised. I just had one who graduated, 2 months ago in May, 1 month ago in May, and he's down already. Doing some things and sending me stuff he's doing. I think he's down in Ohio and panels he's putting together and things he's making happen. And he's only been out of school 2 months. He's got the mayor, he's got the police chief. I mean, these people are always doing this. I'm hearing, okay, this person is going to be working with History Matters, and here are the 2 people who've been selected from Howard who's going to be working on this. I mean, that it's a regular expectation that the faculty pushes them, the atmosphere, and I think that's what I find in this role that I get to do is to tell people that it is the expectation for you to excel. I want you to go out and do that. So you should be grateful every moment. And when Judy says something about the narrative, I think that is something we have to take away, even from the advertising and images that she looks at and the content in the editorial. We have to own that narrative. You can't keep letting other people say, if you look at some of this political foolishness that I don't want to go too far in, it's because they create a narrative and they own it. They will create a narrative that you will walk and say, this is absolutely ludicrous. But they will actually take that narrative and say, if I said it and I say it enough times, then it must be so. So I am telling you, you need to do your homework, you need to know your information, and you need to have that narrative that tells what you need to tell. You need to tell these stories. You need to make it clear. You shouldn't be surprised and not know what Juneteenth is. You shouldn't be surprised and not know that, the Tulsa massacre and what occurred to that community. You should know this. And that's what's important. And then you should tell this. And you should use this opportunity that we didn't have when we were coming out of school. We didn't have all these platforms. We didn't have a podcast. Right. We didn't have a cell phone.
Right. We didn't even have computers.
We had a rotary. We made data ourselves now. We had a rotary phone on the wall.
And to that extent, social media has been a game changer in that it has really democratized the communication where now everybody has a platform. All you have to do is just pick up that cell phone and start tweeting or what have you. And that didn't happen in the past when you had, editors that were keeping, certain things out of the
gatekeeper no more
out of the discussion. And and you see what's happening now. Like I said, I call the speech suppression or the thought police, where, oh no, we can't teach those ideas. That's dangerous. That's another reason why they don't want us to be educated. They don't want us reading, because when you read, you start to think, and you think critically, and you start to challenge, ideas and things that it had. That's what's happening with Nicole Hannah-Jones and the pushback to her 1619 project.
Right. People don't want you to think.
I'm not saying that you have to accept 1619 as a fact or as, this is the gospel as to what happened. This is an interpretation from this particular individual. We have all kinds of ideas that flow in the society that can challenge any kind of a thing. And it could be based on religion. It could be based on some sociological ideology. It could be based on whatever. But we come to a very dangerous place in society when we don't even want the thoughts to occur or to be articulated. That's real dangerous. You don't have to agree with, you don't have to agree with anything.
Right.
That's your prerogative as a citizen.
Right. However, we have to let it be out there.
The atmosphere is very, very dangerous. And that's where I have to, draw the line. And we're supposed to be a free speech society.
And we have to hold up to that.
Exactly.
And the thing about it, when I worked at the Chicago Tribune, one of the many quotes that used to be when you walked into the Tribune Tower was Voltaire. I might not agree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it. And so we therefore have to say we are not going to have people shutting voices down. And that's why I tell young people, and I will continue to tell them, you do need to read. Read. Great writers are great readers.
Exactly.
Your critical thinking. You have to push and get your narrative out there. You have to do your homework. And Judy is spot on. You don't have to agree with a perspective someone else have, but they have a right to have that perspective, and they have a right to put that information forward. And what we see now with this political attempt to shut down here in Virginia, critical race theory teaching in the school, that makes no sense. That's absolutely no sense. Part of your free thought and your critical thinking is for you to assess information and then make your choices from there.
Right.
But what we can't do is stop you from having that information.
Right.
I want to ask you, Dr. Gracie. So we went through Judy's story about how she got her PhD. That is no small feat. So I'm just going to keep saying that. So how did you, Dr. Gracie, go about getting your PhD?
Well,
it was a reporter, a beat reporter. You could have been doing that.
No, it was a combination of things. She's right. Certain things happen, and we both have laughed when she came here because her daughter graduated from here. Yeah. And the irony was, she was like, I went to undergrad here, Gracie, and here you are now on faculty. But I was working full time as a journalist. I'd always thought about going back to school, but when I was in Chicago, I decided to do my master's up at Northwestern, and I was like, this is crazy. I'm trying to go to grad school and work at a newspaper, a daily newspaper. Who has time for this?
That's a lot, yes.
And one of my professors called me in, and I thought she was going to say I was the worst graduate student that she'd ever seen. And she said, I think you need to get your PhD. I think you would be wonderful in academia. And because I really thought she was getting ready to tell me to get off the campus, and I don't know why I thought that. And she's one of the people I dedicated my dissertation to. Dr. Elizabeth Dipple. She called me in and said, I'm looking at your writing, I'm looking at your research. I just will never forget that. I will never, ever forget that. And so I've made it a point to pay it forward, to mentor people, to tap people on the shoulder, to say, I'm seeing you and I see something and you need to go do this, because people have continued to do that for me. And she was a catalyst. And she died before I could tell her I'd gotten accepted and went back to grad school. So that's why I made sure I had her as a dedication on the dissertation.
Yeah.
She saw it and she believed it and said, you need to go and do it. And Judy will tell you, you get in grad school and say, what was I thinking? Read all these books, what's going on? But it's important for Judy and I and you, Pam, to be role models. We have to remember that, whether we want to be or not. We have to make sure wherever we can, it may not be every day, but we do have to make sure we reach back and touch and pull somebody else forward and tell them to do whatever it is they need to do. My most favorite moment as a faculty member, as an administrator, is to watch people soar. See someone who came this way for whatever reason, wherever I was working or teaching or now, and then to hear that they are out there doing what they are supposed to do. And that's my number one thing when people come in at orientation. I said, know your purpose.
That is so cool. That is one of the quotes that I have here that is really like one of my things that I believe. It says, we all need someone who gives us the courage to be who we were meant to be. And whether it was mentors or teachers that we had at CAS, one of my favorite ones was Gail Roberts Jones now, I guess it is. but she was my creative writing teacher. She was over. We had a copywriting class or some kind of advertising class. She just always encouraged me, and so I really think about that. And in terms of even my branding accelerator program, is certain times where you'll see people that have that it, right? Certain people that have that it, and they just need that encouragement, or sometimes a push in the pool.
A push. You remember Miss McCampbell in the English class?
Oh my God.
McCampbell in the English classes.
Yes.
I mean, when you go back, I think it's important, the work that Judy does when her book came out. I mean, I was emailing everybody, look, Judy's book is out. Judy's book is out. I saw her when she was there in New York, when Carol Williams was inducted. I mean, we push that. I mean, I'm just as proud of her, and she may not even know it, that I'm here sending messages. But that's what I think we have to do. If we really believe it, you do have to pull and push and keep encouraging, because you just never know when that might be the moment that it makes a difference for someone to go ahead and say, I can do this.
Yeah. And it's so important that you had someone that you at school that pushed you. Judy, you had someone at school that pushed you. But I remember you were working at WB Donor, Judy, and there weren't a lot of African Americans there. I would think it was probably you and Kyra, right? It was like you were in the media department.
There were a couple of others.
But you were in media, which is one of the ones where it kind of like it handles the money, so to speak. So they didn't really have a lot of African Americans here. They don't mind putting them in administrative. They put them in any other places that really doesn't have to do with money.
Well, media has to do with getting the message in front of the right consumer.
But basically, you get commission on is what I'm saying.
No, you're thinking about ad sales.
Right.
The only time I sold advertising for a cable TV company, but I started in advertising selling ads for the Hilltop. Which is Howard's newspaper.
Yes.
I did write stories for the Hilltop, and you got paid a flat rate. And one time I saw a check that our advertising. One of our advertising people had, and it was some good money. I said, wait a minute. So I quit writing stories and I started selling ads. And it was an easy sell too. It was the only outlet on campus. And back then, Isabel Wilkerson was writing for the Hilltop. We couldn't wait until Friday when the Hilltop came out to see what Isabel had written that week. And her books, Cast and Warmth of Other Suns, are just masterpieces. We were all classmates.
Wow.
In the school of
I met her at Michigan State actually when she did her book launch. I don't know why. My daughter went to Michigan State, so I drove up there to meet her. The Warmth of Other Suns. I sure did.
But one thing that's interesting about this whole issue about the narrative is, where I work, I'm at a PWI. And I deal with all kinds of people and cultures, literally from all over the globe.
What is PWI?
Predominantly white institution.
A predominantly white institution.
Okay, I'm like,
and I don't do this work to say expose racism per se. I do it to tell the truth, because in my work life, when I deal with students, I deal with administrators, I deal with faculty from different parts of the globe, that is not so much that they're racist, and I wouldn't call them racist. I think that there are things that happen in the world that they're just not aware of. It never occurred to them to say, oh, I didn't know that. And so when you break it down and look at it from just a humanistic standpoint, we all have our stories that just have not been told because we have not been allowed to participate in terms of creating and driving that narrative. So I did want to make that point, because I certainly have colleagues in my research associations, on these editorial boards that I sit on, and at my institution, that are so supportive of my work that I wouldn't want it to be suggested that there's some sort of an adversarial thing going on. It's been quite the opposite. It's been encouraging. And there's stuff that I'm publishing now that I think 10 or 15 years ago never would have got published, because there is some very progressive thinking that goes on in some sectors of the academy. So I do want to put that out there.
I want to just break really quick for this. Really, I don't know if you can kind of see this. Oh, I put it on Judy. Hold on. It is a picture. I don't know if you can see it. This is Dr. Gracie Lawson. This was not the yearbook. This was actually 20 years later, and you and your hubby there. She's still
was that
there.
Our class reunion?
Yes, this was a class reunion, and then also too,
Damn, don't put some crazy picture of me up.
no, that's you there as well, right? Not here, that one right there, you and your husband. So you
Okay,
guys, not
yeah,
only,
that was fine. You got
that's what I'm
some
gonna say
pictures.
is
I'm
not only do,
like,
but not only do you career women doing phenomenal work, PhD, had a career before you started the PhD, married. How long you been married, Dr. Gracie?
Gosh, I think, what is it, 27 years?
Almost 30 years. How long for you, Dr. Judy?
I think I'm coming up on 29 and
We
next month.
everybody,
Yeah.
Parents, that's really making us date ourselves.
I
I
know.
know. I had to
But
do a little math real fast.
what I'm saying is that there is this theory that a lot of the younger women think like, oh, I gotta sacrifice this because I can't have that. Been married almost 30 years, kids, going to college, I'm out of mentoring other kids, PhD. I'm mentoring people in my Branding Accelerator program. I probably have mentored like close to 5,000 authors and speakers. And I basically like push them out the pool and say, this is how you do it. We're going to work it out as you start swimming. I'm not going to let you drown. But the point of I'm just trying to make is that you're making a difference, as well as also having it what I call holistically as well, like doing it as well. And, showing up, I'm so proud of the class. I was looking at in the book, Gary Hartwick was in there as well. He's doing phenomenal work as well. Yes. And when we just go through and it's like, oh my God, yes, they did go to school with us,
Absolutely, Pam. I mean, you can't go anywhere in DC, Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, and somebody didn't go to Cass Tech.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. They're from the Big D. I was just on a call yesterday and someone's like, I'm from Detroit. No, I didn't go to Cass, but I'm from Detroit. So, right. I mean, we had a spirit, we had a culture there. I mean, at Cass, there was a culture of support and expectation of excellence as well. And I go back to what Judy was saying is not only that narrow, but letting people know, because I tell them, you are capable of much more than you think. So yes, it's a matter of some days, it seems overwhelming, but you just keep pushing. So you can do whatever you want to do. Be married, not be married, have kids, not have kids, have 3 or 4 careers. But what I hope that we use our opportunities is to tell people to do it.
Yes.
Don't be afraid, do it.
Yeah.
And you can always remember to breathe. Always remember to breathe and say, I got past that. Now on to the next thing. But I want young men to realize they can do a lot of things.
And reach back. And once they are there, to reach back and help other people.
Exactly. Well, you made that important point when you said someone turned to me and say, what are you doing? Because you do. You have to make sure you encourage. Because some people, they haven't seen it. They don't have it modeled in front of them. And you have to remember you are an example to people. When people come up to you and say, Dr. Judy, I heard you speak at such and such. And then you have to remember, okay, it's very humbling to remember that someone's watching you, and you may be that example to someone here at Howard or at Wayne State or wherever she's at, who says, well, she said, I can do this. She did it. She's got this beautiful family. She's encouraged them. Then, hey, I can do this. Hey, Pam Perry, look what she's doing. Pam Perry PR. Oh my gosh, she's got this. She's doing that. So I do think we have to remember that we are a part of that. We are a part of the continuum.
That is so true. And so you guys, if I'm going to end with this last question, it's kind of very similar, but your 18-year-old self, what would you tell them now in terms of whether they should go into media, or if they do go into media, what they should expect or what they should really kind of push for or fight for, I guess you would say. So Dr. Judy, I'm going to have you go first.
I used to have this little meme on my mirror at my mother's old house when I was coming up. And it said that life is what happens when you're making other plans. So you can have something that you think you want to do. I think you have to be, open-minded and be willing to go in, some other direction. You might be in a situation where you think, this is okay, but I could do better. Mm-hmm. Or you could be in a situation where you don't like what you're doing. You could be in a relationship that you don't like. It could be a toxic relationship. And, we're women of a certain age now. Life is short. If it's toxicity on a job, in a relationship, or what have you, you can just leave. Mm-hmm. We're not on the plantation. We can go.
Juneteenth is coming up.
Make a choice. If you made a choice and you didn't like that choice, fine. Make another choice and keep it moving. And it will come that your gifts and talents will make space for you and opportunities come to you. Because I'm in a place now, I have to turn stuff down. I don't have the capacity. I got to sleep at some point. So it's just, you do what you have to also listen, with that spiritual ear. Is this what I'm being called to do? Meditate on it, think about it. And then if it doesn't feel right in your gut, leave it alone.
That's it.
If it feels right in your gut, then you say, okay, this is probably what I need to be doing.
And then also too, you have to find out what you don't like to know what
exactly.
you do like. And so I find that even like when I was dating before I married my husband, it's like, okay, I'm not dating dudes like that. I ain't dating dudes like that. This and this and this. So you can find out what you do like, right? You got to find out what you don't like.
So you got to kiss some frogs before you find your prince.
Yes. That happened.
you have to do that as well.
Oh my God. So that's silly. So Dr. Gracie, so for you, your 18-year-old self, what would you say that you needed to do? Or if you were going to pursue a communications career, like what kind of things, once you go in it, what is that calling about? Because it's like your career is your calling. So what are you like called to do or think that you were going to handle?
That's such a fabulous question because I would tell my 18-year-old self to still do what the follow paths that she took and then even take some more because I have lived in so many states. I have lived across this country. I've changed jobs, so I'm creative. I'm a adventurer. I will go out and try. I feel like Judy says, I've been blessed and I will tell anyone that. So I'm not going to complain. She's right. I'm at capacity. There are things I would love to do and I don't have time to do them. People say, can't you serve on this and won't you serve on that? And here's an opportunity to do this. And here, come get involved with this. But I would say what I always said, believe in yourself and listen to yourself. She's right. If something doesn't feel right, you don't have to do it. And if you're doing something that isn't right, stop doing it. But I think you have to live life. You can't be afraid of it. You have to be willing to try. I think I am very glad I went into not only the profession of journalism, practicing as a journalist every day, but also going on to academia. I had the opportunity to make a choice to change careers. Everybody doesn't always get to do that. So I'm really blessed to have been able to say, this is something I want to do. And, once I got in grad school, I was like, what was I thinking? But so I will always tell people to stretch, if there's something you want to do, go do it. And if there's something you're not enjoying, then do something else. What I would tell people is to be in motion. Do not stand still because you don't have to do that. You don't have to say, that's one thing I don't want to do is say, I wish I
would have. I know I've lived my life like that.
Judy is right. If you don't like it, then you do something else. Now you can plan to do that something else, but you can do something else. But I think that as we sit now in 2021, there's some some opportunities that people, it's whatever they open up the door. Those behind us, our former, Cass Tech folks who are there behind us in the new building, and any young people we run into, they can do so many things. They can try so many hats. I remember I grew up with a guy there in Detroit who said he wanted to be a biologist, and we were in the 7th grade, and I was like, man, I don't know any biology people. But sometimes I wonder, did he meet someone? Did someone push him and encourage him to do that? And so I've always said, if someone says, you want to, fly to the moon, go for it. I don't want to go up there, but if you want to go, find out a way to get there.
Right.
Call Jeff Bezos, he's going. See if you can catch on board. But I would always tell people and tell that 18-year-old to keep doing, to keep going forward. Stay in motion. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. When you hear that voice, as Judy said this trail may not be for me, then change the trail. But don't change you. Make sure you grow, and then you have to breathe. I think as 3 Black women here who are successful and have so many, we do have to breathe. We have to take care of ourselves. So we do have to remember that. We have to take care of ourselves.
Can I one last quick thing about the 18-year-olds? They have so much power in their hand. This technology, and yes, my cell phone does have HU, sticker on it. That's why
it was a culture.
It's my phone. They have so much power in these devices, and look at what Darnella Frazier was able to bring forth through this technology. It's so powerful. Some people think it's evil, but it's just a tool. How do you use it? They can use these to start businesses.
Yes.
They can use these to tell their own stories, to put out a positive, encouraging narrative. They can do so much with this technology. So if there are any 18, 19, 20 and up year olds that have embraced this technology and can use it better than I can, then grab hold to that and carry it forward.
That is good. I remember at around 15, 16, I think we had an assignment at CAS, one of these assignments the teachers gave us, like, write out your goals. And so what did you want to do at 16, 17, 18? I think I could only go up to like age 40. I couldn't even think like what I would be doing beyond 40, right? So it was like at a certain age, I was going to get married, this and that. And I found that paper not too long ago. But one of the things that I said at 30, I wanted to own my own ad agency or PR firm. I hadn't even worked. I hadn't gone to college yet, but it was something that I remember reading a book on the way to high school. It was called The Rosemary Touch, written by a lady named Lois Wise, I believe, who did have a PR firm in Ohio, a white lady, and she was about copywriting. And I just thought that would be so interesting to have an ad agency. And she was like a writer and she was a creative director. And that was something that was stayed with me for a long time. I never met anyone that was in advertising at that point, just from that little novel I was reading on the Hamilton bus on the way to school. But that was something that I did. And so, like you said, when you were at the Hilltop and you started selling ads and you were saying this was good money, when I was working at the Free Press and selling ads, I was like, this is really good money, for being a young person. And eventually it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but the skill set.
It sparked. Because Pam, you said it when you mentioned being at the Free Press, and I'm going to forget his last name, who introduced me to Al Fitzpatrick at the Night Ritter paper, Academic Journal in Ohio. Those are the chains of things that occur, and you do one thing and you do the next. And he says, you need to talk to Al Fitzpatrick. There's an opportunity to be a journalist there, a reporter this summer.
I wonder if it was Greg Hutchinson.
And Greg was there. I was in touch with Greg. But my point is you keep pushing yourself. You keep telling yourself you can do different things. And I've watched you, Pam. I've known things you were doing even if I wasn't there. And so, because like I said, I've lived in so many states, it's almost hilarious, the license plates that are in the garage. But what that also meant was I got exposed to different people.
Yes.
What you say when it comes to images, Judy is talking about, when it talks about the ads and the images and messages that are presented, that's when you learn and you grow and you keep finding different ways that people connect to talk about and do things by living in all of these different places. Being in Texas right now would be, I'm glad I have moved from Texas. That would be a little bit different right now. But living in all these places, you got to know different perspectives and understand people's lived stories are important.
Yes.
We have to tell people to make sure they tell their lived stories, because that's what helps shape them.
That is, that is. Well, ladies, I want to just thank you all for just coming on today. We've been trying to tackle you guys down for like 3 or 4 weeks. I know you're busy, graduation, this and that, and earn PhDs. Dr. Gracie, Dr. Judy, I am so excited to just talk to you guys and knowing that you're just getting started in like the really next phase, right? In that second half, right? Is just really getting going and doing other things as well. And just keep inspiring people. You know, Dr. Judy, you're inspiring people. Dr. Gracie, you're inspiring people. You're helping to push. If there's anything that I can do, let me know. If you have people that are just wanting to get into the speaking realm or write books, I've got Speakers Magazine here. He says, talk to that lady. That lady over in Detroit, you know, she'll help you. And I think, Judy, you have recommended a couple of interns and things like that to me as well. And, you know, if they could take it, they can intern with me because I'm tough. It's like, okay, you got to be able to do this. But anybody that you recommend is always top notch because you see something in them and you say, okay, you want to do this, check it out, you know, check it out and work with Pam, you know. So just thank you all so much for joining me today because this has really been good. You know, I stream this in our class group, so it is going over there right now. So you'll go back in there and see. You'll see some comments and things like that. There is one guy that always talks about daily hashtag moment, and you know who that is, right? He's always talking about the
Alex Kimbrough, who actually lives in my neighborhood.
You know he's on it. He works in broadcast. He's been there 30 years as a broadcast producer. Yeah, so really, really good. So you guys have a good rest of the day. Thank you all for joining us. And for those of you who want more information, they'll be in the show notes because I'll put their bios and their pictures in there. So if you want to get in touch with them and even just learn a little bit more about what they do, they'll be in the show notes. So I am Pam Perry and I am out. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages. PamPerryPR.com, where you help you shine like a superstar.